show where I try to educate real stories.
Thank you for watching Truth and Justice with Vivian King. I'm so excited tonight to have a full round table. We are going to look into the life of David Collingsworth, originally from Indiana, has been to prison on the installment plan, as he said, but was fortunate enough to change his life and get out. He's still on parole, but he's going to tell you about how there is great life after prison, and how you have to make it on your own and not make a bunch of excuses. We also have my regular co-host, Mr. Danny Sneed, who got the guest for us tonight, David Collingsworth. And I also have the famed local lawyer, national lawyer, state lawyer, Tyrone Moncriffe, who is going to weigh in on the conversation about Mr. Collingsworth and the hot topic in the news. The young lady the little girl, basically, in South Carolina that gets drugged by the cop. We are interested in good and bad comments, just what your comments are. And we also have a youthful guest tonight. I'm so excited that we have Cookie Moncriffe, who is Tyrone's daughter, to give us the youthful point of view, because we do this show for you, for the citizens of Harris County and for the young people, so that we can document our history, our thoughts, and to actually give you a voice. So thank you for coming tonight, Cookie.
Thank you.
And please come again, and anytime you know of any young stories you want to talk about, we welcome you. So let's get right in with David. So David, thank you for opening up your life and your story to us and being willing to share your experiences so that we can learn more about the criminal justice system, and we can also applaud you for being able to change your life. Because so many young people say you can't get jobs, and you've done that. So tell us about coming from Indiana and how just tell us about your troubles.
Well, the trouble started whenever I came from Indiana, believe it or not. My mom and my dad moved down here because Dad didn't. I don't know if you remember history, but in 1978, everything was closing down up in Indiana and Ohio and Michigan. Mm-hmm. Everybody was coming down to Texas and looking for work. My dad had a really good job. He worked for Spring Branch School District. He was an auto mechanic. Mm-hmm. And so Dad packed up the family, and down here we came.
Let me tell you a funny story right quick. In Detroit, I went to college here in '76. I was here, and there would be bumper stickers that say, "We turned off the lights in Detroit. We're the last ones that left the Motor City."
I've seen it quite often. Last one out of Michigan, turn off the lights.
Yeah, turns off the lights. They turned off the lights.
Whenever I hit Campbell Junior High over on the northwest side of Houston, I found that it was a faster way of life than what I was used to, because I come from a small town in Indiana. Mm-hmm. I came from Plainfield, Indiana, which is a little bitty town. And the guys were smoking cigarettes and dipping snuff and sneaking around with girls, and it was, that was the thing to do. And I got to where I would skip class, and I'd be smoking cigarettes and make sure I got my cigarette. I'd take my lunch money and buy cigarettes, and had a little snuff can that was in my back pocket to make sure it made the little faded ring in the Wrangler jeans, so I'd be cool,
They'd be cool,
And that's all it really was I thought I was being cool, but it progressed. It progressed into a burglary of a habitation. We'd be sneaking around, and because we didn't always have money to get what we needed, but we'd know that there was local somebody smoking pot in our trailer park where we lived at, so we'd sneak in their house to steal their weed. I mean, they can't call the cops on you for stealing their weed.
Right.
So,
absolutely.
I mean, that's how it started out, just trying to be hip, slick, and cool.
Yeah.
Come find out all these years later, that wasn't so hip, slick, and cool. I was developing bad habits.
Right.
Thinking errors that you never even recognize as being thinking errors. You think it's right because you're trying to be cool.
Right.
And so whatever it takes to be cool. And so you go, once you start that kind of lifestyle and you start lying and you start living that with the drugs and the girls, you got to put on the false bravado to get all the good-looking girls. If you don't, you're not cool, and you're not going to get the good-looking girls. Mm-hmm. And it just builds up and builds up and builds up. Next thing you know, I mean, I did some pretty wild stuff. Mm-hmm. We did a caper one time We called it the garbage man caper, where we went into a subdivision with a pickup truck and about 4 or 5 of us, and we'd break in the cars and put all the stuff at the street corner and go to the next car, and after the truck would go down the end of the road and turn around and come back, well, we'd pile all the stuff in the truck, and whatever we got that night, we'd take and split up the...
Wow.
Wow.
And that's a caper.
Yeah, we called it the garbage man caper.
The garbage man.
We'd set the garbage at the street, and then you'd see how many cars you could get before the truck turned around and come back, so you'd get out of the neighborhood.
Wow.
Just doing silly stuff like that. I mean, and like I said, it developed into bad thinking errors.
Right.
And so whenever instead of getting out and getting work, if work was slow, because at that time I didn't have a career,
Right.
it was easier to steal something, or
Right.
go out and rob somebody.
Right.
Right. So yeah. So one of the cases that you did, I know a big one was robbery, aggravated robbery, and I think you said you got 28 years for that.
I got 28, actually 2 28s and a 10 and a 2.
Right.
I mean, it all happened right there together, because there was like 4 or 5 years I just started getting in trouble, and it seemed like I couldn't stay out of trouble. I couldn't stay out of the county jail. I had pretty long hair at the time and rode a motorcycle, and my mama says, there's no wonder you're always getting arrested. Look at all that hair you got out behind your head. You know, the cops would see me riding, they'd know exactly who it was, and so
Right.
they'd chase me down and catch me. I got addicted to methamphetamines.
Oh.
Wow.
And a buddy of mine did cocaine, and so he was trying to turn me on to cocaine, but it just didn't quite get it.
Right. Right.
And I ended up owing the dope man more than the fear of the dope man was stronger than the fear of robbery.
Right.
So the only way for me to get the money to pay the dope man was to go robbing. And once I robbed once and got away with it, it was easier to do it the second time.
Right.
Wow, that doesn't
Right.
sound familiar.
And then I found out that you get an adrenaline rush from the robbery.
Right.
A new
Right.
You
drug.
get just as addicted to the adrenaline rush as you did. Yeah, it's a new drug.
Right. Right.
And so one robbery led to another. Next thing you know, the night I got busted, I robbed 2 convenience stores in a stolen car. And I had already had a dash with the law and got a little 2-year sentence where I was on parole. I did a parole in absentia. And I was so ignorant to the way things went that I didn't even realize I was on parole.
Wow.
I thought I had done another little 30-day stint in the county jail and got out.
And didn't realize the prisons were so full that they didn't bring you in, but you were
Right.
still on parole.
Still on parole.
So whenever I got arrested and I'm going down and talking to the judge, and he says, well, you've already been to prison once. I'm like, no, sir, I've never been to prison. I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't have a clue. But, I mean, all those piled up, that's 4 felonies at one time that I went to prison for.
Right.
So at
But then they gave you a big sentence of 28 years.
yeah, but you know, in 1990, they had what they called the revolving door.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And so
Right.
they'd
We
give you a
remember it.
large amount of time and expect you to serve a short amount of time. The
Right,
judge told me he wanted me locked up 3 years. He said on a 28-year sentence, non-aggravated, I'd be eligible for parole at 34 months.
And that was McSpadden even then,
That was
wasn't it?
Leroy
McSpadden.
McSpadden.
He's
yeah.
still
Michael.
Michael McSpadden.
Michael McSpadden.
He's still the judge there in the 209th right now today.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's what he gave me. He gave me the option of a 12 aggravated or a 28 non-aggravated. And my biggest concern was that I'm not an aggravated person. Why would you even want to give me an aggravated
Right.
sentence?
Right. Right.
But I didn't realize the difference between the 28 and the 12. If I'd have took the 12 aggravated, I'd have been off parole a long
Right.
time ago.
Right.
Right.
Right. Right.
But I'm not sure if I would
And then back then, aggravated wasn't halftime then, not in
That's right.
1990.
No, it was 1/4
It was a
time.
fourth
1/4
back
now,
then,
yeah.
right? It was a
I'd
fourth.
have had to pull 7 years
You'd have had to pull 7, but then you'd have been off parole.
Through.
after
After
12.
12.
After
I'd have had to
12,
do 5
but
more
you'd be
years
off
on
now.
parole.
You're
Yeah, I'd
right,
been off. As
right.
a matter of fact, whenever I did my violation in 2000, I think I'd have been off parole.
Right.
It'd been real close. So I made the wrong choice, but you know what? I don't think that it was a major mistake because I don't believe that anything happens in God's world by mistake. I still had thinking errors whenever I come out of prison, and I would relapse, and that's why I went back. It took me 3 times going to prison. The 3rd time I was sitting in prison, and I was thinking to myself, you know what? Every time I come to prison, I'm successful. I get a job, I go to church, I furthered my education. I got a Bachelor of Arts degree in Pastoral Counseling and Theology.
Wow.
I was a volunteer chapel assistant. I put together a library for the Bird Unit, for the chaplain on the Bird Unit. I've led Bible studies for Chaplain Michael Manis on the Gibb Lewis Unit. Those were all things that I felt good about. I mean, I actually got a job in maintenance and would keep a job the whole time I was in there.
Talk about that. So you said you did 6 years, 5 years, and 4 years. Which one was first?
6.
The 6 years. So are you describing now for us the 6 years when you had a job in maintenance?
Yeah,
Tell us about
I
that.
ended up on the Gibb Lewis Unit. And on the Gibb Lewis Unit, because I worked for AutoZone in the free world, and I would put together The store would have a semi-truck parked out in front of it, and all the merchandise would be in it, and I'd have to take the merchandise out and put it on the shelves. So they found out that that's what I did, and so they offered me a job in maintenance in a maintenance warehouse. And so the Gibbs unit had just opened up in 1990. They were building prisons
Oh, it was
everywhere.
brand new. That was brand new.
So it was brand new, and all the merchandise was still on pallets, and it was in a warehouse, and the maintenance was going on, and the bosses were coming up and trying to get stuff and find stuff and didn't know where it was. So I set up the shelves and put all the merchandise on the shelves and found out that each item had a numerical number. They had 11-digit number. And if you put everything in numerical order, then it actually put it in like a carpentry section and a plumbing section and an electrical section, and all your tools were even in number size. And nobody realized that until I started unpacking it and started getting into it and putting this warehouse together.
It became like a little game, didn't it? A puzzle, yeah.
It took me 17 months to put that warehouse together.
Wow. And I bet they're still using that formula
They probably
now.
still are,
Right,
yeah.
right.
And the boss at the time, Mr. Hammond, he asked me what he could do for me since I had done such a good job for him. And I told him I wanted to go to school. I wanted to learn air conditioning, refrigeration, and electricity because I had tried to do some of that in the free world
Right.
and just couldn't stay out of drugs and trouble long enough to keep a good job. And I felt like once I got out, it was something that I could actually have a career at. 'Cause how are you going to stop being a knothead and going back and forth to prison if you don't have a career, if you don't have any way to make a living?
Or any
Go
skills.
back to
You're just going to go back to
same thing.
doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results, and you're going to get the same results every time.
Right.
So he went ahead and got me into the air conditioning refrigeration course, and I took a 600-hour technical course
Wow.
and worked. I still worked. I'd go in the morning time and work. I'd get to work at 7 a.m. I'd get off work at 11, and I'd go to school, and I'd go to school till about 6 o'clock in the evening.
Wow.
And I just applied myself, and I learned everything that I could about air conditioning, refrigeration, and electricity, so that whenever I got out, I'd have a good trade. What I didn't realize was I should have applied myself a little bit more into the rehabilitation
Aspect.
Right.
because I was still a drug addict and an alcoholic. And just because I had done 6 years, it was kind of like my addiction was just lying there waiting on me to get out.
Wow. Wow.
As
So
soon
it
as
was
I got
lying
out,
dormant.
yeah. As soon as I got out and I went in a convenience store and I'd see that big old beer cooler with all that ice on it, and I never would think that that would be something that was pretty.
Right.
But to a guy who hadn't seen it in about 6 years, it was like, an oasis, you know.
Yeah, she still look good. She still look good.
So over a period of time, and it happened each time I would, like I said, I've been there 3 times now.
Right. So when you got out after the 6 years, you're an AC technician, you're a warehouse expert, you're an electrician, but you see this beer. Now, beer doesn't seem like that would make it
It's
go
still
bad.
alcohol. Alcohol is alcohol, and alcohol is a drug. Alcohol is one of the biggest legal drugs that everybody uses
That's right.
and makes excuses for. And if you look out throughout history, it's really screwed up
Absolutely.
our society.
Absolutely.
So how did that lead you to the next?
Because you get a beer or two and you get away with it and you think everything's cool and you didn't lose your job, you didn't get locked up, everything's all right. So next time you go down and you have 3 or 4, 5 or 6, next thing you know, you're buying the whole case.
Right.
And it's a gateway drug.
It's just a gateway. It really is. It leads you into the same circles where now you're back to around people who are smoking pot and snorting cocaine. Because I would go to a beer joint. I mean, and there was a beer joint on every corner back then. And it became a way of life. It's weird because I stop and think about my way around town, and I knew my way around town by where all the beer joints were.
Wow.
Landmarks.
Landmarks, yeah.
Right.
So it was just a bad way of life. And there was
Tell me how it led to the next prison time.
You know, believe it or not, it was women. I would get mixed up with women trying to be hip, slick, and cool. And then I would end up doing the things that it would take to keep the women in my life. Rather than thinking about David anymore, we're going out now, we're going gambling or whatever the case may be. I'm trying to look good.
Right.
And so I would end up in a fight. And then my parole would get violated because I was fighting and I was drinking. Or they would get scared. I even got one charge on there that's a family violence charge. And the females would get scared. And so they would call the police and because they didn't know what was going to happen because I'd be screaming and yelling and whatever. And my life would basically be out of control because I was doing the drugs and I was drinking and I was a whole different person whenever I was that way.
But what was the actual parole violation? Because it doesn't look like you picked up another offense to do the 5 years. Was it a parole?
My first violation, I was in Indiana. I was in the state of Indiana and I didn't have a travel permit. So, and what it really was boiled down to is I was trying to get away because I had been in an altercation. And even though it wasn't the way it was supposed to be, it was still an altercation, and the way parole is, or the way at least I was thinking, is that the parole was going to put me back.
Right.
Anytime you get accused of something,
Right.
right or wrong, you don't go through a court of law. You go to
Parole hearing.
parole hearing,
Right,
and a
right.
parole hearing is by the preponderance of evidence.
Right.
Right.
And it's been my experience that whenever you're the parolee and you're being accused of being violated, they just violate you anyway.
We call it kangaroo court.
Yeah,
Is that what y'all call it?
Right.
Basically, that's what it is.
Basically,
they say the preponderance of the evidence, so it depends upon who's doing the weighing, because that's
Right.
what preponderance means,
who's
right?
pondering.
Yeah,
Pondering.
who's doing
Whose
the pondering.
preponderance is it, huh?
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
So wow, so you skipping out going to Indiana was basically your violation.
Yeah,
without
that's
the
what
permit,
that's
and
what
that-
they boiled down
sent
to. They
back
said you should have never got arrested. I said, but I didn't get arrested. I said I was detained to see if I was supposed to be here or not, and Texas sent for me. They had me shipped all the way back to the Bird Unit. So I'm on the Bird Unit. I got my hair cut. I got whites on, and I'm having a parole hearing. And I'm like, well, something's wrong with this picture. Shouldn't I be in the county jail or something, and not actually in the prison?
Right. Right.
And they said, "Oh, but you haven't been revoked yet. If you haven't been, if we're not going to revoke you, that we'll release you. I'm already in prison. I mean, how can you release me? Like I'm supposed to believe that one, you know?"
Wow.
So that led to 5 years of prison.
Yeah, I did 5 years on that
Wow.
violation.
Wow, that's a long time for a violation.
Because
why
at
was
that
it so
time
long?
there was a lot of violators at that time, and there was a lot of people they were letting out that would go back out and commit crimes. What was the guy's name that went out and committed murder?
Yeah, the capital
Mc-
murderer.
Mc-
McDuffie.
McDuffie.
McDuffie,
Yeah.
right.
So the public was
And
scared.
McDuffie, didn't McDuffie marry Frada's
I think so.
sister?
I think so.
Okay.
I think so. I think
Yeah, so you had a lot of violators that were going out and doing things, and it really looked bad on the state because they were letting people out on parole, and then
Right.
they weren't ready for parole. They were
Right.
violating and ended up coming back, and so they kept us for a long time. And so I did the same thing I did before. I applied myself, and I went to church. I went and got into AA, and just tried to do everything that I could, and
Dave,
kept a
can
job.
I ask you a question?
Sure.
You're in a prison. I have a lot of clients in that situation. There's nothing but negative people in prison.
That's
How do
not
you-
true.
Well, I mean, when I'm saying
There are positive people in prison.
I mean,
That's the
there's a lot.
perception.
Perception is
Right.
that there's negativity in prison. How do you extract and be so positive? You get in prison and do all these positive things. Explain that to me. How do you?
It's because I was striving to change myself.
I got you.
I didn't want to be the person I was on the outside. I wanted to be somebody different, and I thought that if I did that long enough, AA's got a phrase that says "fake it till you make it."
Right.
Yeah.
So if I smile every day and I'm laughing and
Aw.
I'm cheerful and I'm whistling, and I would do those things.
So when you get
because
out,
it was
the alcohol was stronger than that.
yeah,
urge.
that's
I
what
got
would
you.
end up happening. Once I
got
got
you.
out, my positive attitude would go away
That's what I
over a
was talking
period of
about.
time.
Okay.
I'd get a job. I'd get some money in my pocket. Next thing you know,
Right,
I'd,
right.
I'd hit a rough spot.
Right.
Or I'd get me a girlfriend, and we'd start having rough areas. We'd start bickering and whatnot. Next thing you know, I'd relapse.
I got you.
And can I interject something?
Sure.
Because it's about perception
Right.
to the person that had their experience. And what happens when we go to prison, we fall into the same perception that the people had neither. We go in thinking that prison is a negative environment,
Right.
but we become whole in prison. If
see.
you heard David explain, he was successful in prison, and I was too. We failed with the success outside of prison.
That's the point.
But the
That's
question is, how do you make what's working in prison
Work
which
out.
Yeah.
Right.
which is the perception it's a bad place,
Right.
but it's not, because I'm going to bed, I'm healthier, I'm not drinking,
Right. Right.
I'm not
Got you.
drugging.
I'm not drugging.
Right.
chemically
Away
So
from bad
all,
chemicals.
so all my chemicals are balanced. So all there is for me to do is either turn this day into something positive or negative without the outside clutter in
Clutter.
your mind
Right. Right.
of women, impressing women,
Right.
drugs, and
And
alcohol.
we call those triggers.
Got
It's
you.
those
That's
triggers.
what they are. They're triggers.
They're triggers. So what the disease of addiction and alcoholism does is, they describe it as very cunning and baffling.
Right.
So the baffling part about it is no cure, that it waits patiently for you to make parole.
I got you.
And as soon as you get out,
There it comes.
what it is a thought process, cognitive.
Right. Right.
Alcohol and drugs is only a symptom of my problem.
There you go.
My disease was in my thinking.
Right. Right. Right.
Yeah. So the last time I was down, exactly what Danny's talking about.
Hold on. Let's take it a step. So now we're doing the 5-year stint, and then you get out again. You've learned more skills. You're older. You're wiser. How do you relapse again for the 4-year stint?
Right.
The
Tell us
drinking
that.
and the alcohol.
And the women.
And I got another girlfriend, and we moved in together, and said some vows and proclaimed that we were married. And I was working for myself. I had a handyman service, and a very good handyman. Had a lot of skills. A lot of people wanted to hire me. Met a lot of good friends, and a guy come over one night, and I was drinking at the time, and he wanted me to roll a joint for him. And man, I said, man, I don't even smoke that stuff anymore. I said, a little bit of beer, that's cool with me. I said, but I just don't think that I should be doing that. He said, well, I'm not asking you to smoke it, just roll it for me.
Right.
Well, you know, it's automatic whenever I rolled that joint.
You gonna put it up to your
flip it
mouth?
right up in my mouth, spark that thing up.
Right.
And
Automatic
next thing I
reflex.
know, I'm smoking that joint.
Right.
And I'm thinking to myself, well, I'm dirty now. I might as well just go on ahead.
Right.
Yeah,
Go
let
ahead
me
and
do
do
some
it.
meth
Right,
now. Let me
right,
get some coke.
So it just started the whole ball rolling all over again.
So what was the trigger that sent you back to prison? Was it the assault? Or
It was the assault.
It was the assault. So you got this. You got the assault on a family member with this girlfriend
Right.
that you're living with, but yet that case gets dismissed, but it still violates your parole.
Because what happened is the judge gave me a time served. I had 11 years built up
Gotcha.
on my robbery charge.
But he really didn't. It's dismissed on the computer. So he might have said time served, but I mean,
That's the way he declared it.
no. Your record shows dismissed. That's like something you can get expunged.
Well, that's good. I didn't know that because he told me he was going to give me time served.
Well, it says dismissed unless it's a typo, but it says dismissed. It says
you
dismissed.
printed it off.
I
never-
printed it off.
Let's leave that typo on there.
Sounds to me like I need
Look,
an
let me show it
attorney.
to you. Let me show it to you. May the 1st, 2000, court order, dismissal. It was dismissed.
Oh.
Praise God then.
But even though it got dismissed in court, that still doesn't
still-
mean it's not a parole
Well,
violation.
it was a preponderance of the evidence.
Right, there's
The
that
evidence
word
showed-
again.
There we
back
go.
to
Preponderance.
Right.
But
So then
but
you
at
go
the
back and-
time, I felt like the judge saved my life.
Really? Even though you had to leave your girl?
Yeah, because I was successful in prison and I wasn't being successful on the outside, and I was losing everything and I was hurting everybody, hurting myself. I wasn't doing the right things. And so it gets back to what Danny was saying a while ago. I mean, I asked God. I don't mean to get religious on anybody,
I like
nothing,
religion.
but
We like religion.
I asked God. I said, God, what am I doing wrong?
Right.
I said, how come every time I come to prison, I hold a job down?
Right.
I go to church.
Right.
I get involved as a volunteer in church, and I do all these good things. But then I get out and I relapse, and I get with the girls, and I do all the wrong things. And
Right.
I felt like he was telling me that I needed to take everything I was doing on the inside outside with me.
Right.
Because what I was doing is I had these habits and thinking was in prison, but whenever I'd get out of prison, I didn't bring those same habits and that way of thinking. And there's a lady, she's going to be on my radio show Friday night, Miss Madeline Ortiz, and she's the director over the rehabilitation programs for the Texas Department of Criminal Justice. And I worked on her air conditioner. And so I asked her if she could send me to the Kyle unit. Now, the Kyle unit was built in 1990, and it's a rehabilitation. It's behavior modification is what it is. But if you had a robbery charge or any kind of an aggravated charge, you were not eligible. So at this time, this is my third time down in prison, and I'm a trustee. I'm able to go outside the fence. I made S2 trustee because I work on air conditioning and I work on ice machines and just about anything. Electricity, plumbing, I can do it. So they would take me outside the fence and work. Well, I was working on Miss Ortiz's air conditioner, and she would come to our chapel service, and she would come like a Christmas party or AA party or something like that. So I said, please send me to rehab. I said, because I've got some thinking errors, and every time I get out, I end up screwing up and relapsing, and I come back, and I never want to come back to prison again.
I know that's right.
Right.
I mean, I'm tired. I'm just
Right.
tired
Oh,
of
I
doing
know.
time.
Right. Yeah.
I'm getting old. I'm 48 years old. In November, I'll be 49. November
All right.
5th.
God bless you.
So it's time that I get my life together.
Right.
I mean, my daughter's 26 years old, and I wasn't there with her. And I've got another daughter now in Indiana. I paid child support on her.
How old
She's
is she?
13.
13, okay.
So it's time for me to step up. It's time for me to do the right thing.
So you was having fun when you were up in Indiana getting that parole violation.
Yeah. So Miss Madeline says, you don't think after serving all this time you know what you've done wrong? I said, ma'am, it's not like that. I said, I've shown a proven record that every time I get out, I relapse and I go back to the old way of thinking.
Right.
Something's got to give. So
Right.
she went ahead and approved it, and I went over to the Kyle unit. So you got to realize now, I'm volunteering. After doing all this time, I'm volunteering to do 6 more months in prison
Wow. Just to
Wow.
get the rehabilitation.
just to get the rehabilitation.
Wow.
So they sent me from one prison to another prison and put me through the system. And I was a peer educator. And if you know anything about peer education, I learn by studying. If I have to teach somebody else something, I'm going to learn it to the best of my ability so that I can teach someone else. Well, that in rehab, they had different jobs for people. And what they were really doing is it's a society.
A community.
a community.
So they're creating
teaching.
a society similar to the outside.
There
society.
you go.
Gotcha.
So one guy, they call him a coordinator, but what he really comes down to is the mayor.
I see.
And they got another guy who his job is to write you up every time you do an infraction, and
So
he
he's the
monitors
policeman.
everything. So he's the policeman. Well, my job, I was the education coordinator.
So you're the teacher.
So I'm the teacher. So I was teaching classes, and I was teaching different thinking errors and how to set goals and how to recognize your triggers.
And this model is a pure education environment where everybody there is in prison doing
Right.
time.
You're not the leaders, but you become the leaders.
Right. Instead of bringing outsiders, we're going to
We
commit
do it all ourselves.
Inside.
You
Inside.
adapt those roles, and so that with greater responsibility, now you're learning how to be in a society. That's a
Right.
brilliant idea.
Right. And,
That's
and
brilliant.
this is not irony, but I went through that same program,
Ed Kyle,
Wow.
the exact same program.
that's brilliant.
And we can thank Ann Richards,
Governor Ann Richards.
Yeah, she
Wow.
started.
recovering alcoholic.
Herself, right.
And when I found out that, I went back and looked at her Wikipedia page, read her bio, because I didn't really know her.
Right.
And that was my way of kind of honoring her and kind of like,
Saying thank you.
man, look, man, you really stepped out on a limb for us, and you really created an environment
Right.
for us to recover from.
Right,
And
right.
you're looking at the results of her work, me and David in this room tonight.
Right.
So, we just want to,
Amen.
if Ann Richards' family is anybody here, we just want to tell you, man, your mother, man, we really appreciate the sacrifice
That's awesome.
she did when she was a governor here in Texas.
Thank you, Danny.
That's awesome.
That's
Yeah,
beautiful.
the program that Danny's talking about was designed to be played as a game, believe it or not. And it's a very serious game because we'd write tickets on each other's behavior, and then we would confront each other in a circle, and there would be different punishments, and sometimes the punishment would be embarrassing, like having to dance the funky chicken. And the reason why,
For an Indiana boy, I bet that was really.
yeah. Oh, my family's from Kentucky and Tennessee, so I can
Same
I can
thing.
do a hoe down
Same
like the
thing.
best
You
of
cut a
them.
rug.
Same
No, you
thing.
gotta run.
Indiana, Kentucky,
Yeah.
tomato.
So I think that the reason why it was so embarrassing, some of the punishments, was so that you would remember it.
Right. Stick
Because
with you.
elsewise, we had what we called selective memory, especially as an
Oh, yeah.
alcoholic.
We still
Right.
do.
We
Right.
don't remember the bad times. We remember all the good times. So we remember all the camaraderie and the
Right.
good times, partying, everybody laughing and joking, having fun. But we don't remember the hangovers and
Right.
the losing
Throwing
our
up all
cars.
night.
And,
Right.
yeah,
Right.
This. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And it
Oh,
was
yeah.
designed as an image buster.
right.
So, because what we do is we put on masks when we're in there. Like, I'm bad, I can't hurt, I
Right,
don't
right,
have these
right,
feelings.
right.
But if you're in front of men and you're doing the funky chicken,
Yeah.
it breaks down that image that I'm a tough
That
guy.
you're a tough guy, right.
And when you laugh at being laughed at, you realize that maybe I don't have to put on this mask.
I take the mask
Yeah.
off.
And so when I go back out in society, I can realize that, hey, I don't have to come out like
Have
this
to have
here
it. Yeah, right.
and look at everybody like this.
Yeah, right.
Remember I said false bravado?
Yeah,
Right,
false
right.
bravado.
That's what that was. That's
Yeah.
false bravado. That's not who I really am. The me was the guy who could humble himself enough to do the funky chicken.
Right.
Because I
Right.
knew that funky chicken dance was going to save my life.
Wow. That's
Amen.
brilliant.
And that's
Brilliant.
that's the way it
brilliant.
was.
That's
That game, we
brilliant.
got to play in the game so much that it became second nature. I'd write Danny up all the time for talking in line or for cutting in line, and the next thing you know, I'd find myself that I was the one that was talking. I was the one that was ready to go cut in line, but I saw him do it, so I'm going to drop him in the box. And so I'm seeing my own behaviors in the other folks, and that's where
Wow.
everything changed at.
Wow. Wow.
Here's one of the most powerful things they taught us. When you meet an individual that you don't like, one of the things that's probably going on is either they're mirroring your own behavior or past behavior.
Wow.
So what
Seeing yourself.
you're seeing yourself.
But it's a part of yourself you don't like,
don't
or is
like.
it just
No,
self-hate?
it's something that you don't like about yourself. And it's a
But you don't
weird
admit it.
psychology.
But you don't admit that you don't
It's
like that about
subconscious.
yourself.
You're not
Subconscious, not even
aware
aware of it.
that when you meet somebody in an office or something, I don't like them. You're never looking at why I don't like them.
Never ask the question, right.
Right. The science says it's because they're mirroring who you are or who you once were.
Or some of your behavior.
Some
Some
part
of
of
your
your aspect.
behavior.
Right.
It's triggering that you don't know that person.
Right.
Why do you get this feeling? You know, that made me like that made me force me to like everybody.
And not be so judgmental.
Because I don't want to mirror that, like, that's me. No, that's not me. And the only way to conquer that is, but I love everybody.
Right.
So I never see something bad about me.
See the positive.
If I love everybody,
not
see the
judging
positive in
anybody.
everybody.
Right.
That's powerful.
That's awesome. That is
Scripture
awesome.
says that you have the fullness of God inside of you. So if I get to know you, I get to know a different personality of God that I don't get to know with Danny. But yet I'm still interacting. So that's why I like getting to know everybody. Because I want to know as much God as I can.
Beautiful.
So-
That is simply beautiful. So the last time we're doing our 4 years,
Yep.
you're doing something new. You're in this great program. Now, what's that program called?
It was Kyle Unit.
The Kyle Unit
Behavior modification.
Behavior Modification, where you wanted to work on your thinking
I
errors.
really did. And I
And
learned.
you did it.
I always viewed myself as a good person, and reality was I was a dirty, no good, rotten dog. I always viewed myself as being better than, or having a sense of, like I had a right to do whatever I
Entitlement.
wanted to do, a sense of entitlement. And it's not true. I mean, I need to humble myself, and I need to realize that I'm just one of a great many.
Absolutely. Right.
I don't know.
What a beautiful thing.
Today I do a radio show called The Prison
Yes.
Show.
Yes.
And Ray Hill started it 35 years ago.
Yeah.
And Ray's told me, look, I don't expect you to do my show. You do your own show.
Right.
So what we do at the Prison Show is we're called the Prison Show Gang. And a lot of us never been in gangs before, but we kind of just adapted to be called that way because Ray always said it's the Ray Hill Prison Show and the whole Prison Show Gang. So whenever Ray retired, we just call ourselves the Prison Show Gang now.
Great name.
And so what we've learned is that maybe I'm a producer and Hank Lamb is the host and Holly's a hostess, but we're all just a small part of the great whole.
Right.
So we have a pre-show meeting, and the person who answers the phones or the person who answers the front door, because we're all up in the studio and we want to make sure whoever's coming in the station, we know who that is. But they have just as much say-so at the table at our meetings to decide where the prison show's going as I do or as Hank does.
Right.
Now, if there's something emergency we need to talk about, of course, me and Hank and Holly, we talk, and we get Dewey involved because Dewey's our engineer, if you've ever seen the prison show. Dewey's been there for 23 years, so
Wow.
just about any kind of circumstance we've already had on the show, Dewey's been through it. We can ask him what Ray did, Ray was my hero. I used to watch Ray whenever I volunteered. I started out at the prison show in 2004 bringing Ray a Diet Dr. Pepper.
Oh, how sweet.
So I realized I was going to be the best Diet Dr. Pepper brinker you could be, because if I brought it early, he'd drink it too fast, and if I brought it late, he'd be parched in the middle of the show.
Right.
But the point of that is that as the Prison Show Gang, everybody was just as important as the next person.
Right.
Maybe my job is different because I put the show together,
Right.
and I make sure that the right person's in the chair, or that we even have a person answering the phone, or someone that knows how to do the soundboard, because what happens if Dewey gets sick? We have to have a backup person doing the soundboard. And everybody on the Prison Show Gang, we try and get trained on everything. And so right now, Holly Carmen is a hostess, but she's going to school. She's got about 4 more weeks of school. So what we've been doing is trading off different people in there as a co-host for Hank or myself. And we just take turns, and that way everybody gets a chance at it.
Well, set up this video. I understand you brought us a video that you
Sure
want us
did.
to see. Set it up, and then we'll get Mark to play it.
Well, the video was basically, we've had several different reporters that came, and they would like to do stories on us because the prison show is a model for all the prison shows that are all over the world, and everyone's got a little bit different twist to them.
Right.
But what makes us famous is we have a whole hour's worth of call-in that's just shout-outs. And if your loved one's on the inside, maybe you can't get to him for a visitation, or you know your letter's going to take 2 or 3 days and you got something you want to say, so they just call us and they're able to shout out. Now, of course, they can't talk back, but you know, it really means a lot just to hear your loved one's voice.
Absolutely.
But the first hour we do news about cops, courts, jails, new legislation, whatever might be happening in the world about prison. And then the second hour is all about shout-outs. And so this particular clip, the Voices of America came, one of the reporters from Voices of America came and just took a lot of shots of what's going on in the prison show.
All right, we're ready to see it.
Correct? Is it Inez?
Yes, it is.
KPFT,
May I have your name and where you're calling from?
A main feature of the weekly prison show is the call-in segment, where people can address their imprisoned loved ones.
Richard, I just want to say I love you, and my birthday's passed. I know your birthday's coming up too.
Many of the people working on the show are former convicts, including producer David Collingsworth, who first listened to it in a prison cell.
It showed me that somebody cared. Somebody was actually out there that cared.
Really appreciate it.
He says the show welcomes all callers, but there are often familiar voices on the line.
We can name all the regulars that call in, and we're a part of their lives, and that's what really matters to us.
And maybe a seller too.
In addition to the regular staff, the Prison Show counts on a number of expert guests who discuss subjects like prison health care, legal issues, and the death penalty.
Good evening, everyone, especially the men and women on Texas death row and their families and friends who are listening in this evening. As many of you already know, Texas leads the nation with 550 executions since 1982.
One letter we have from Norman Fountain tonight. He still hasn't gotten treatment.
Attorney Bill Hayburn informs listeners about civil and legal rights in the prison system.
We feed inmates information, and we feed families information.
When this show went on the air in Houston in 1980, it was the first of its kind, but Hayburn says it has inspired many others.
What this show has become has led to other shows in other parts of the country adopting a similar format.
The show sometimes features live music performed by former inmates like Dennis Price.
Well, now I'm locked away.
His experience emerges in many of his songs, but Price says he wants to move on.
I want to be a good person for my son, but it is a chapter in my life, and I've learned from it, and I think that it's made me who I am.
Price and most other ex-convicts criticize the Texas prison system as abusive. Bill Hayburn says many Texans favor candidates who are, in his words, tough on crime, but that often changes when they have a close experience with the system.
It's the quickest way I know to make a liberal out of a conservative is to have a member of your family go to prison.
Hayburn says this program has pressed for reforms like prisoner telephone privileges, which was enacted in 2007, but he says there are many other issues for the Prison Show to address each week. Greg Flakus, VOA News, Houston.
I said, fill my cup, brother, with jailhouse drinks. Said, fill my cup, brother, with jailhouse drinks.
Thank you so much. That is such an inspirational.
Awesome.
Isn't that awesome?
Awesome.
Yeah,
And so
great.
tell us one more thing. So the Prison Show is actually on the radio in the prisons.
No, well, yeah. I mean, you can listen to it in
Texas
the prison, right?
They have that choice. Okay.
Right.
Yeah, they have the choice to listen to it because, especially if you know your loved one's going to be shouting out to you, they're going to listen.
Right.
So we have repeater stations in Livingston, Huntsville, and Galveston. So we reach about 100-mile footprint from each repeater station besides here in Houston. And we just got our brand new, KPFT just got a brand new transmitter right here in Houston, Texas.
Fantastic. I just want to know this before we change topics. Will you come back?
Yes, ma'am, I sure will.
Thank you, because you've been a great guest. Thank you so much. So I, just because of the news right now, I have got to talk about the young girl in South Carolina that was drugged by the man police. Damn it, I'm mad about it. I gotta say I'm mad about it. And I want everybody at this table to weigh in. Okay, we have young and we have seasoned people at the table. Let me weigh in first as the mother of a 20-year-old. I would have had a heart attack, and I would be after that man if he did that to my daughter. And let me tell you just a few reasons why. First of all, as a lawyer, men cops are not even supposed to handle women prisoners, okay?
Right.
If a woman is arrested under HPD policy, Houston Police Department, a female officer is to be brought to the scene. Why do you think that is?
Right.
Is it because you don't want her to be searched in her underwear, manhandled by a man?
Right.
A man's physical force is much tougher than a female's force.
Right.
Woman to woman, you can handle each other.
Right.
She's not going to break your back. That female cop is going to be tough enough to keep you in line.
Right.
I would have felt much better if a female officer came, or really, screw that, scratch that, if a female coach or someone came in. Because the thing that bothers me in our system is every kid is labeled. That's where the judgments come. That little girl who's acting out could have been suffering from molestation, abuse. We have all these counselors we pay in the school systems to keep up with testing and bull crap half the time. But can they tell a lot of children, it's discovered that children are molested by teachers and counselors. We know that, Tyrone, don't we, as criminal defense lawyers? So if a child is acting out, schools should still be able to handle school business. There's a number of ways that could be handled. Danny told me one this morning. I'm going to let him say it and not steal it because it was a good idea. But my first impression is that child could have, I was an abused child. I was raised by different people growing up.
Right.
I acted out, okay? And I was always smart, but I was struggling at home. There were a few people, other peers, who cared and helped me when I was probably wanted to, I had that F it moment and wanted to do something stupid. But there are many ways that a child can be dealt with, and one of them is with our psychologists and social workers who are working at these damn schools, rather than to have policemen manhandling and hurting little children. If a parent had done that,
right,
they would be charged with injury to a child.
Right.
Tyrone and I represent people all the time that spank their kids. I used to beat my little daughter's butt, and I would tell the lawyers, if y'all see me on the chain gang, because Morgan got her ass whooped, okay? Because I had to make sure that she was more scared of me and my words
Absolutely.
than her friends at school, because I was a working single divorced mom and I needed to make sure I had a psychological hold on her.
Right.
So I beat her ass every now and then to where she was bigger than me and I had to make her get on her knees and put that belt on her butt. But I had to do it until she told me that we can't do this like this anymore.
Right.
But and I understood and I knew when it was time to stop. But the bottom line is a mother should have been the one up there, or that child has to have some legal guardian that could have come up there and beat her ass. And if they'd have called her mother up there and her mother would have manhandled like that, would have happened, Mr. Collingsworth, what do you think would have happened?
Yeah, she'd have humbled herself real quick.
She'd have humbled herself if the school let her.
Absolutely.
Because part of school's policies is that if a child is abused or you see abuse, they're supposed to turn it into CPS.
Right.
But now we've created a system of authority where the cops can do what the hell they want to do.
Pipeline to prison.
Right,
is what they
right,
call that.
right.
That's the pipeline. But you can't let the cops decide to manhandle your children.
I don't know
Cops
why
aren't
cops
supposed
even
to
in the
handle-
school.
Right.
They're not supposed to be handling little girls.
Absolutely.
I know that damn right, so let me stop. Okay, so Tyrone, what you think?
Here's my problem. If you see the video, those who've seen the video, it's not just the cop manhandling the little girl that disturbs me. It's the men who's standing up there watching. Well, there are teachers who's standing up there just watch. If I'm a teacher in that situation, I'm sorry, hey, officer,
hold up.
we don't need to do it like this. Let's put a stop on it. Somebody should have stood up to the cop, because if that had been my daughter, my daughter's here, I would have had an issue with that cop, and it would have been, I wouldn't have called police looking for him. I would have gone looking for him. So if I had seen a woman being pulled like that across the street, in the street, I would have stepped up.
Right.
Let alone a 16-year-old girl in a classroom, and nobody stands up for her. So that disturbs
How
me.
can she go back to school like that?
Right.
Whatever she
I mean,
was doing, she wasn't fighting and she
absolutely.
wasn't the risk.
Somebody could walk in.
Oh, no. So, okay, so Cookie, we have you here tonight, and we don't have the young person's perspective. Whatever that is, I know we're dramatic old people. Tell us your perspective. Let us hear your voice.
Okay, my perspective is that it was all the way wrong. We know that. It was all the way wrong. But what we're used to in our society, especially with Facebook and all of our social media, we see that all the time.
Right,
Whether it's between
right.
kids, whether it's between police and police, whether it's police and grown men, police and kids. Honestly, I feel we're desensitized in a way to a lot of those things.
Right.
Like we can
You see so much of it?
Right. We see so much of it and we choose what we want to be like, no, that's wrong. Let's do something about it. Yay, we got him fired. Next thing you know, while we're laughing at that other group of girls or, that other, situation where a man is beating a woman or whatever the case may be. And we're like, oh, that's funny. But when it comes to this, we're more like, oh, no, this is wrong. So I think it's a deeper issue that we need to all look into versus it just being, when it's because I have and not taking away from parents, of course. I don't have children yet. But, at the same time, it's like, instead of it being just when it appeals to you or it connects to you.
Right.
How about looking at when it connects to any and everybody?
Anybody.
Right. That's my whole perspective on it. So it's wrong, but I think we should sometimes take a deeper look into a lot of
what's
things
going
like
on.
that. Right.
What's going
What's
on.
really going on.
Right.
What about you, David? What do you think?
Well, I was really surprised that the officer was even in the classroom.
Me too.
Because whenever I was growing up, and maybe that's just showing my age, but the officer didn't come in. The teacher would ask you to step outside the room. The principal would come in there.
Right.
I mean, they got two-way speakers in there, and nowadays
Absolutely.
they've got cameras and everything. So you'd
Right.
think that the administration would have stepped up and done
Right.
something about
Right.
it. evidently, and we don't see it on the camera, evidently administration probably called the police, and the policemen come in there because the girl was acting up.
I think that's what happened.
Well, see, in these schools now, you might not know this, David, it's policemen assigned to every school.
Right.
So they work there just like the teachers.
Right, right.
So, and I don't know if that was the case there, but in Houston, HISD, it's cops at every school.
And they've got metal detectors and everything, right?
HISD has a police department. Houston Police, I mean, our school system, so every school
So
has.
was this officer, was he a
we don't know the details.
district?
I'm assuming that he was school district.
Well,
That's what I'm
right.
assuming, but I don't know.
That's
What's
more
your
reason
opinion?
he
Well, let's put it. Well,
Danny, let's do it.
Well, let's put him on blast because his name is Deputy Ben Fields.
Okay, let's put him on blast.
And we're gonna drop his deputy because he was fired.
Right, right.
And justifiably fired.
Right.
And the reason they fired him is not because what we saw in the video.
It wasn't police policy. I'm sure that wasn't
It was
police policy.
And the policy says when you're arresting someone, once you got a hold of them, you don't let him go. What he got fired for is when he tossed her.
Oh, wow.
Right.
Are you? Wow.
That's what he got fired for.
Ridiculous.
So,
But why would a grown man be arresting a baby?
Right.
well,
I mean, she didn't commit a crime. What is the crime? Because in school, you might be violating the student code of conduct, but that's not against the law.
Right.
You understand? When you don't put
She had no-
handcuffs
right.
because somebody's talking back and they're being unruly.
She wouldn't leave the class, I think, story.
Right.
Right.
Wouldn't leave out
But
of
that's
class.
not illegal.
I know.
That's
Exactly.
not illegal.
Exactly.
But you can't charge a child with trespass. I mean, that's a situation where if we have a problem, there are less coercive, physical, and violent ways for us. We're in an educational setting. You tell me these brainiacs at a school can use their
Cannot-
brain
exactly.
to try to talk to a child.
Right.
I don't care if
Get
they
a-
had to call her mama or send the police to her damn mama's job
pick her
or
up.
her uncle's job or whoever her
Most
legal
of the
guardian's
principals
job
have
is
that
and bring
daddy
them back.
voice that can tell you what to do, and you're automatically going to get up and do it.
let me give you this scenario.
But some kids don't have parents, so I'll roll with that. But everybody has an adult, even if it's a foster parent,
Right.
that has. So why can't our tax dollars go for that same police officer to take that effing cruiser to wherever her legal guardian is, or mother or father, the person on her paperwork, to come get her and let them whoop her butt. But I bet you they would say that if they whoop the butt, they got to arrest the parent. But you don't arrest the cop. And that we have a system that has gone crazy. We have to have accountability with our law enforcement officers. They are not God. They are not our daddies. They are not our boss. They follow policies and procedures, people, citizens, taxpayers. They work for us, and everyone has a guidebook. Like I said, HPD, you got to have a woman to deal with a woman, so you doggone sure got to have a woman cop to deal with a girl.
Absolutely. I'm 16-year-old.
Yeah, and if a little girl is fighting you as a woman, I'm gonna deck her ass. I agree with that, but I'm a girl. I can't hurt her like you can, David.
Right,
You
right,
know what I'm
right,
saying?
right.
I mean, if you acting bad with me, I'm gonna go with you. You understand what I'm saying?
right.
But I'm not. But I can't hurt you like Danny can, like
right.
Tyrone can. He
Right.
could have broke that child's back.
Right.
But the laws that protect children against their parents didn't show up to protect them from anybody that's not even
Right,
a parent.
right.
Now, Adrian Peterson, we see what happened to him
Right.
when he disciplined his child with a switch.
Yeah.
With a switch, with a whip, and he
Right.
got to lose his damn career.
Right.
But you take a situation like this, and a lot of when they went to the little town meeting and they went before the school board, you know, people got a chance to view what happened. One lady says, firing a police officer sends the wrong message.
Bull.
Wow.
And one parent, dad said what Vivian said, if that would have been my daughter, him being fired would be the least of his worries.
And let me tell you what worries me as a 57-year-old black person who watched the civil rights movement and came and was a little kid at the end of Separate but Equal. We know, David, that if that was a little white girl, that cop would not have done that. Can you speak the truth right now? Because I'm just telling you that. And what I'm so frustrated about is white people, our white brethren who we love. I love you tonight. I got a lot of white friends who I love. But the Black Lives Matter might not be couched right because the young people made it. It should maybe be Black Lives Matter too.
Right.
I recognize, David, that your life matters. Your life matters to me.
Right.
Your children's life matter to me. All I want you to know, David, is that Cookie's life matters too.
Yep.
That's all the black people are saying. And
Right.
so white people are twisting that around, and it's just driving me crazy because black people agree. Everybody black, do you agree? White lives matter?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. All lives matter. And that's all we're
Obama
asking
said
you
it
is
pretty good the other
asking
day.
you is to please make decisions like our lives matter too. Because we
Right,
know
right.
damn well they wouldn't have treated no little white girl like that.
No,
That
can I-
just
But
wouldn't
Viv,
happen.
If that had been any color girl, I would have been just as
I would have
upset.
too. And that's what white America
Hispanic,
needs to understand.
white, it doesn't
Black
matter.
people are going
It
to be the
doesn't matter.
same mad.
I'm mad
Whether
no
it's
matter
white,
who it is.
Hispanic, we're not going to make that racial difference.
No.
If it's a
Any
white
little
kid,
girl.
I'd have been just as
Yeah, I
mad.
don't think that the cops should have been in there doing that. Just
Period.
straight up.
Period.
Well,
but we just want cops, if you're going to do it fairly. And that's where black people hurt, is because
Right.
we just feel like
One-sided.
it's one-sided.
Right.
And then we had teenagers on here, and they told us that what they see with their friends
Right.
is one-sided. And so we have got to stop that generational racism that's going on, because a lot of cops are generational cops from when it was racist in Jim
Right.
Crow, because
Right.
it's a family trade.
It's the
It is.
and it's inherited
Passed
behavior,
over.
and we've got to stop it and stop denying it.
Right.
Okay.
Oh.
We got a phone call that I'm
Okay,
ignoring
we got-
because
okay.
hot. It's a hot topic. This hot topic is hot. So we're gonna take you, caller. Turn your volume down and state your position, please.
Yes, I want to say very good show, Ms. King, and your guests. I'm glad you're addressing this very important issue. And I just wanted to bring out a couple of things, if I could. That police officer was a school resource officer, which means he was assigned to the school. And I understood that the kids knew, they called him Slam Him Down Deputy, that he slammed kids
That's what I
down.
heard.
Got a
And
reputation.
he did that before. He has a reputation for it. And these types of actions is when we complain about the school-to-prison pipeline. It's this type of action and reaction to students in school, and their discipline and their conduct in school leads to an arrest, a criminal charge.
Right.
So I'm concerned about that and would like for your guests to talk about what we can do to stop some of this, because it's really resulting in our young people getting criminal offenses for something that should have been handled by the school.
Right.
What do you think, David?
Well,
Thank you.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
I have to agree with her. The school should have their own disciplinary court, if you want to call it a court.
Right.
And
right.
they hire these police officers, but I don't think they should actually be peace officers from the free world. They should be peace officers as far as it is in the school.
Right.
And so the child should get an infraction and have to go in front. If you want to have a court, then a principal and some teachers and the
And maybe some
parents.
students.
And,
Right,
and
right.
even
Kind of like y'all did in prison.
Right.
I mean,
Right,
you know,
right.
kind
Peer
of
education.
have a few kids involved in that, so they can feel like they have a voice.
so that they actually have a fair trial.
Right. Right.
But what happens is instead is the police officers actually charge them. And they have to go to court, and they have an arrest on the record. Even if they don't get a conviction, they have an arrest
And
on the
nobody
record.
knows what's wrong with this child. What bothers me in an educational setting, we need to be
Right.
helping kids, not
Right.
penalizing them. What's your
Right.
thought,
Absolutely.
Tyrone?
You don't know what the mental health issues were
Right, you don't
involved
know.
with this kid. You don't know why this kid had just shut down.
Right.
Right.
I'm like you. Call the female coach to come
Right.
in and take over.
Right.
That's all they had to do.
Even if she
Right.
gets swats, it's better for
Right.
the female coach.
Exactly. Exactly.
Even
So-
if it gets swat, and when they swatted us, when we got our butts whipped in school, they called our parents. They whipped your butt and
First
called
one,
your parents.
Yeah.
My daddy signed the paper, said if you
Whoop-
got
yeah.
to whoop him, whoop him.
Right, right. But see, we're a little older than you, so there wasn't no paper to sign. If you went to school,
didn't sign it.
Yeah, we all 10 years
You
older than
got
you.
the
You went to
whooping.
school, you got the whooping, baby.
Yeah.
You got the whooping.
As a member of a grassroots organization called Texas Advocate for Justice, and our aim is to end mass incarceration in the United States.
Hold that thought. Let me take another call. Caller, turn your volume down and state your case. We got 5 minutes. I'm gonna let you end in
Okay.
that statement,
All
okay?
right.
So,
Hello, this is Miss Victoria Rogers.
yes, ma'am. Hi, Miss Victoria.
And I feel like he have did this before, because whenever you seen the children in school, nobody said anything. They know that's what he do. They was in fear. Those children were terrified.
Right.
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 I think they said one of the little boys who took the video said that he did it because he was scared. And someone told me and called me today and said that cop has done it before and had lawsuits against him for doing it
Right.
personally.
It's
been
pending.
sued.
It's
Right.
well, it's a
So,
trial set.
And let me tell you this. If a cop goes against policy and they keep him on the staff, then that's when you can pierce the veil, the government veil from governmental immunity, and they can sue that school district because they know that man is a problem.
Right. Right.
Not only that, lots of times we bring the police in, but they're not looking at our children the same. They look at their kids. There's no way a man would stand up there and let nobody do that to his child. That teacher wasn't even a teacher. They need to do something about him, because he called that person in that school and see what he did to the child. He didn't even intervene.
I agree with you. Thank you for
agree.
your call. I mean, because something like that could cause post-traumatic stress disorder.
One of my issues.
An authority
One of my
figure with a
issues.
gun is going to beat a kid. I haven't never taken a beating from a man, and I'm 57 years old. I mean, that would traumatize me. I've had
That's
arguments
one of
with
my
men
issues.
that scare me, just like David said with his girlfriend. She got scared and called the police. That's traumatic for women. I don't
It
care how
is.
much noise we talk, because I'm one of the, when I was young, in my relationship, I was one of the biggest mess talkers you could be. I learned to mind now, Cookie. You got to learn to mind young.
Right.
Okay, I didn't mind when I was young. So I'd always have men hitting walls and wanting to hit me and things like that. Like I said, I do mind. But back then I didn't. And so I'd be scared. But it taught me to mind. You know, it's like I don't want nobody to, instead of hitting the wall, to hit me. And I started learning, you know, I don't have to emasculate him with my words. I don't have to talk like that. I mean, but to have a grown man attack you like that, every one of us
16,
knows when we were 16, if we had a fight, we remember it.
Oh, sure.
Right now, today, you remember that first big fight where somebody whoops your butt, or you know what I mean?
Right.
And so, you know, that child's gonna remember that for the rest of their life.
Right.
And we're condoning that.
And the people that witness it receives trauma from watching it. Also,
We got 3 minutes. Let's wrap it up. David, thank you for being on the show. I'm gonna let everybody say something. Give us some parting words.
Well, it's best if we take responsibility for our own actions, and whenever we have that moment of clarity in life, we need to act upon it rather than letting the vision be clouded again by another drink or by another bout of anger. A moment of clarity is what's going to save everybody from recidivism. If you have, I don't care what you're repeating the offense of. Whenever you have that moment of clarity and you realize that enough is enough, rather than going to get you a drink to try and get over it, man, get out of the situation.
Wonderful words. What do you say, Tyrone?
Awesome show. And David's story was just awesome. I think it tells me that, and my clients who are listening, you could take responsibility for your life. You don't have nobody to blame but yourself. You have to do it.
All right. What do you say, Danny?
I say happy birthday to Miss Vivian King.
I was off last Wednesday because it was my birthday. So thank you.
You're beautiful inside and out. And it's just an honor to be your friend and to create a platform for the Path of Freedom Prison Ministry at St. John's that allows us to celebrate the success of a person like a David. And David is not just a guest, he's my friend.
Yay.
And
thank you. All right, so what do you have to say, Cookie? Thank you, young Cookie, for being here. You're a big girl for being here with us.
Yes, thank you for having me on, first of all. And I just want to let people know in my generation that we have a voice too. We are not alone. You are not alone. If you see something, say something, especially for the little kids we have now. They look up to us. I have so many mentees, and I'm not perfect, but say something and be there for them. Don't just sit, just ignore it. Say something. Kids out of school, what are you doing out of school? I took a young kid to school one morning because he had to walk from home. Say something. Be that role model.
All right.
Oh, how wonderful. That is good stuff. Well, I just want you to know I'm still telling stories. I've been doing this voluntary since 2011 to give people a voice. I did it for the young people. I'm excited that Cookie's sitting here. I'm going to try, after we get off air, I'm going to try to make her bring some stories so we can have her co-host. I'm looking for, we have Mauricio, who's behind the scenes today, and he's done a story lately. I would love to have the young people. David, you have your prison shows, but if you have any stories you want to tell, more about yours, other people's, my role, my legacy I want to do is give us a voice. The mainstream media talks so negatively about everything and about every person, like we can never change, we can never have another voice, and I want to give people a voice, the families that are hurting by people in prison, what we do, are there different roles we can play? Cookie's generation are going to be our next legislators. Let them come up with different plans for this. Don't just throw people away. We can go back to some of the Ann Richards programs that worked.
They worked.
And they worked. But it's up to them to replace these 60 and 70-year-old people and to try to do something. We want to reach out to them so that they use our tax dollars wisely. Remember, citizens, we need to make our legislators, our policemen, our mayors be good stewards of our money, because they work for us. Thank you for watching Truth and Justice with Vivian King. Please watch again next Wednesday when we try to bring you another exciting story, the voice of the citizens of Houston. Thank you. Thank you for tuning in again. Tonight we have something really good, a hot topic in the news this week. He's been charged with crime. This is a show where I try to educate